Welcome to the 12 Stones podcast, closed meeting edition, brought to you by Right to Win Ozarks. I'm Deborah, and this is Gretchen. And today's closed meeting is going to be about the press, more specifically the press about the library in Christian County.
Indeed. There's been several articles written since last Tuesday's meeting. And we decided to take a look at those articles and account for their slant, accuracy, research, those sorts of things. Ever since President Trump began calling the media fake news, people, I think, have been waking up to all the lies, the slant, the lack of real journalism. So the press as a whole, from national down to local, is mostly compromised and are pretty much owned by large media conglomerates. For instance, the News Leader is owned by Gannett Company, Inc., which is one of the largest media conglomerates in our country. What about KY3, Deborah?
KY3 is owned by Gray Television or Gray Media Group. Mm-hmm. And some of their largest shareholders include BlackRock, Vanguard, Morgan Stanley, giant investment management firms.
Interesting. The Springfield Daily Citizen, which I think is only a couple years old, their CEO is David Steffler, who was a former editor of the News Leader for a number of years. The Springfield Daily Citizen is also partnered with MSU. What about, we've got...
KSMU?
Yes, KSMU.
Yeah, they're basically owned by Missouri State University or connected with them. And we know how liberal universities are these days.
Yeah, they're basically, as they call themselves, Ozarks Public Radio. And as we all know, public radio is often slanted, although we will have a few nice things to say about Chris Drew. So we're basically going to be going through four or five articles, one by Marta Maez from the Springfield News Leader, and that was titled Christian County Library Board President Resigns, Board Terminates Attorney Amid Lawsuit. Right. And then we'll move on to Susan Wade at the Springfield Daily Citizen, and then
Reagan DeTrolio and
of KY3.
Yep, and Chris Drew with KSMU.
Yes. So
let's start.
Okay, so we're going to look at slant, and we aren't going to, get in too deep into the details, but we noticed immediately in Marta Maez's article, there was an obvious slant with the headline, Christian County Library Board President Resigns, Board Terminates Attorney Amid Lawsuit. And the slant is the resignation of the board member, Allison Tuckness. I mean, I don't blame him for putting that in the headline. She did a 5-minute, quote-unquote, impassioned speech that culminated in her resignation. It was very kind of out there. So that would have been a headline. When I was in journalism, I probably would have gone with a headline like that too. So, but the obvious slant in this article is there's about 14 segments or paragraphs, 14 separate paragraphs in this article, and six of some of the largest, deal with this 5-minute rant that Allison Tuckness went on. And she pretty much gives no rebuttal to a lot of her statements. She just quote unquote reports what Tuckness said. The thing that bothers me is that Tuckness was making fake parallels to Nazis in her speech. And you said something, Deborah, that I thought was very, very perceptive when you said it's...
to quote her, she says, in Nazi Germany, my ancestors wore yellow stars on their chests and arms, labels, end quote. I think that comparison is absolutely disgusting. To compare, labeling sexually explicit material in the children's section to Jewish people being forced to wear a yellow star. It's disgusting. I think it's shameful. It's disrespectful. I'm appalled that she would make that connection.
No books have been banned.
Right.
But let's go on. So number 2, Marta simply mentions that one of the members, citizens there, had a sign that said, where is it here? Your role as board members is not to force the library to look more like yourselves. This is Marxist drivel. This is the exact kind of drivel that Marxists use as a way to demoralize and divide people. And she put that in there as if that was one of the indicative points or perceptions that people were having at the library. If you've been to any of these library meetings over the last, going on 2 years now, the vast majority of people are citizens who are concerned about what is being placed into our libraries that harm children, sexually explicit materials,
Right.
inappropriate materials, gender ideology.
Basically, there's just a disproportionate amount of reporting on a certain viewpoint of people attending the library meetings. So, I mean, it's speaker after speaker in the public comment section against these types of materials in the library. What do they report on? They report on the one crazy with a sign in the back.
Right, and they don't give a true representation of what's going on. That's part of the slant. The inaccuracy, I found one in there it's just silly. So to quote Marta, she says, despite the ongoing confrontations between community members about materials and public comment on the appropriateness of children's books at the library, most library patrons remain satisfied with their experience. Well, let's unpack that. First, nobody is upset about the appropriateness of children's books
Right.
in the library. They're upset about the inappropriateness of some books in the library that are being pushed to children, okay? Specifically, sexually explicit, sexually inappropriate, and gender ideology. Anyway, so then she she just quotes verbatim something that the Director of Community Engagement, Nicholas Holliday, had presented at the meeting, which pointed to a quote-unquote 92 Net Promoter Score, which is a survey, it's a metric for customer experience, and they supposedly sent out a survey to anyone who had an email that was associated with their library card.
Right.
And the replies, they coalesced the replies that they got and then put out this 92 out of 100 score of happiness. And
Satisfaction.
Yes, classified as world class. Well, the interesting thing about that is, and people at the meeting, one in particular who was speaking at the time said, I never received that.
Right.
I have an email. And did you, Deborah,
No,
receive one?
I have not received any kind of survey in any of the years that I've owned or held a library card at the Christian County Library.
Right. I did not receive one. And most people that were in that meeting who were of the concerned parents or
Right.
concerned citizens had not received one.
What are the odds of that?
So-
the random survey only going to people who
Yeah.
are pleased with the library.
So what is the raw data on that? I would like to see the raw data. I wonder if Marta looked at the raw data or asked to see how that survey was put together. I think that's an important point, that as a journalist, sitting there with 60 to 100 people at most of these meetings, the majority of them opposed to what is going on in the library, and then they have the audacity to say that they have a 92% positive rating.
Right. I mean, you can look back through the library's minutes and you can see that in early 2022 even, there was maybe 10 people at a library board meeting, most of them being staff or board members. And of recent meetings, there's anywhere from 80 to 100 people. So if there's truly a 92 score, world-class score for our library. Why are there so many people at these board meetings who say differently?
Exactly. So let's just go on. Anyway, we all know that polls and stats can be manipulated to say whatever you want to say. So I wish that Marta, if she had been less slanted than she is, that she would have
questioned that.
She would have questioned that, or not even put it in there. But of course, the slant, the narrative of these huge company-owned newspapers is going to always be left. So then Marta says, she's talking about what happened in August when the board voted a new slate of officers in. And she mentions that Echo Schneider was the one voted into the president role in August in, quote, what has been identified as an invalid election that prompted a lawsuit in September. Well, who identified that, Marta? Who has identified it as an invalid election? Has there been a determination that that election was invalid? No. So again, what has been identified as an invalid election? This is a slant as well as being inaccurate, because nobody has made a determination yet, according to the court, whether that was an invalid election or not. And there is a good argument to be made that it was not invalid. So, but she didn't give that point. She did not give the other.
It's contested. It's not necessarily invalid.
Right. So then she goes on. We're almost at the end here with Marta. She says the lawsuit filed by the Christian County Library District and Hagen, that was Janice Hagen, against 3 of its own trustees alleges violations of the Sunshine Law and the board's own bylaws when members elected a new slate of officers during the August meeting, with the vote being called illegitimate, and then she goes on. And so who's calling it illegitimate? You know who's calling it illegitimate? People who are unhappy that 3 new board members have been voted in that are taking the board in another direction, and that includes those who filed the lawsuit. The library's own attorney, who doesn't, the lawsuit is not filed by the Christian County Library District so much as it was filed, I mean, they have to say that, but the Christian County Library District represents the Library Board of Trustees, okay? So it's not something quote-unquote separate. The attorney for the board answers to and works for the Library Board of Trustees. So you had one member of the Board of Trustees who has sued
the other
members of the Board of Trustees because she didn't like the outcome.
Using the lawyer for the Board of Trustees.
Yes, the whole thing is an absolute, crazy thing.
It's a cluster.
So again, Marta didn't, she doesn't give both sides of the story. She's really only giving one side of the story and slanting it a whole lot. So the other thing she does when Diana Brazil, who is a member of the Library Board of Trustees, one of the newer members, she's been an attorney for 27 years. And she had a beautiful, concise and precise quote. And the only thing that Marta states is, Brazil, who practiced law for more than 25 years, said it was a conflict of interest for the attorney to, quote, pick sides. She really should have quoted her. And I would urge anybody who's listening to go on the library's website, hit the trustee button, and scroll down, and you can find the video and see for yourself what actually happens at these meetings. So that's pretty much all I have on Marta.
All right.
You want to go and work on...
Okay, well, I had Reagan.
From KY3.
Yep.
Which is owned by a huge media conglomerate. Yep.
Yeah. KY3 was the one that was owned by Gray Television, whose some of their largest shareholders include BlackRock, Vanguard, Morgan Stanley, etc. So, Reagan starts out by saying, that Tuckness's impassioned speech, as it shall be referred to by us, it says, immediately following her statement, cheers came from the crowd, either supporting her resignation or thanking her for her time serving the district. Quite slanted. If you go back and look at the video and fact check Reagan here, I doubt that you'll hear anyone screaming thank you or throwing roses down at Allison's feet as she exits. People were cheering because this woman has, quite frankly, been tyrannical as her, during her tenure as president on the library board. She's told us to stop clapping, make no noise. So I think,
She called the police.
she's called the police on us. She's referred to us as Nazis. So I think, it's quite appropriate that people cheer and clap loudly as she exits the room. So going on down in this article here, she's mentioning how there's a state law in Missouri. It was passed in 2022, specifically banning any depiction or description of sexually explicit material, which includes sexual intercourse, genitalia, sadomasochistic abuse. She says, however, this law does not mention anything regarding LGBTQ plus reading material. Tuckness said the two should not be grouped.
So this is Reagan quoting, again,
She's quoting Tuckness,
but giving no other, viewpoint.
Right. She gave a background of the state law, but she's not giving it.
The fact of the matter is that she's trying to do what Tuckness was trying to do, which is to make this an LGBT issue. It is not that kind of issue. The citizens are opposing any type of sexualizing of children.
Right.
The LGBT has just gotten most of the attention because it is doing gender ideology.
It's a hot button. It's a hot button thing. I mean, anytime you hear LGBTQ, it's rarely not controversial. Okay. So they throw the LGBTQ in there because they know it's controversial. They know that people are going to click on it and think that it means that we're discriminating against gay people or what have you. But it's really clickbait. It has nothing to do with LGBTQ. It has everything to do with sexualizing children. And
and notice, and let's just be clear here, in all of these articles, not one of them mentioned the two gay gentlemen who showed up at that meeting to side with citizens who don't want to sexualize children. And you can see the video. You can hear both of them speak. One is a biologist. One was lately with Gays Against Groomers. And they speak very eloquently against sexualizing children in the library. But that doesn't fit the narrative of our reporters here. So that was completely ignored. The interesting thing is, and this points to the death of the legacy media, Chris's video of that on Twitter has over 82,000 views. Okay? I can guarantee you they're lucky if they got a couple hundred views on all of these articles. So that's why you don't really need to get too concerned when you hear these and read about these articles, because they're just full of slant inaccuracies.
right. So she says, this controversy comes amid a lawsuit stating 3 Christian County Library Board trustees, Echo Schneider, John Garrity, and Diana Brazil, violated Missouri's Sunshine Law and the board's bylaws when these members elected themselves as a new slate of officers during a previous August meeting. While all boards elect themselves, that's how they work. And this language used by Reagan it's inaccurate, it's vague, it's slanted. It's not giving a proper picture of the situation. So it says, with Tuckness out, Echo Schneider, one of the defendants in the lawsuit, was voted president pro tem. Board trustees like Janice Hagan opposed this decision. Like Janice Hagan was the only one who opposed the decision. There's no one else like Janice Hagan. She's an individual. And what were they supposed to do with Allison Tuckness resigning? There's no president and there's no vice president on the board. So, I mean, what exactly were the board members supposed to do? Just run around like chickens without their heads the rest of the meeting?
Yeah, well, the other thing Reagan does is she kind of tries to make fun of, quote unquote, the boards electing themselves officers. Maybe she's so young that she does not understand that these types of boards are self-governing as far as their officer elections are concerned, and they do officer elections when needed. And so they do vote themselves in and out of office, instead of the way Reagan tried to make it look like, it was some kind of, embarrassing or wrong thing to do.
Or tyrannical, yes, or, like they're just out of control. They're electing themselves. Okay, so she continues to say that, she reports that they have terminated. Well, it says Tuckness said the Board of Trustees also recently voted to terminate the district's attorney on the lawsuit, with the board's reasoning being him picking sides. Well, Tuckness left the meeting. I don't know exactly when she said that. Maybe when she sat down with KY3, but him picking sides. Reagan does not quote Diana Brazil, who, as previously stated, is a lawyer of 27 years. She does not properly quote her. She just quotes picking sides. But I think it would be interesting to know for anyone reading the article that Diana is a lawyer. And so she has quite the context on Harry Styron's behavior here. So we contacted the Christian County Library Board of Trustees for an interview. Directors with the district said they would be available to interview next week, but not this week, but sent us the following statement. That's a dumpster fire of a sentence. Mm-hmm. But anyway, directors, which directors? Does she mean the Library Board of Trustees? Who's
the executive director? One of the other directors, or one of,
who gave this statement? Who does she mean will be giving an interview next week? Who, cleared this statement? So the statement's as follows. Christian County Library is a special place designed for everyone. The process of creating a space to meet everyone's expectations can be chaotic. But that's what being a public library is all about. Something for everyone. We are always concerned about anything at the local, state, or national level that interferes with the library's mission to provide services and resources to the community. End quote. And it says, attributed to the Christian County Library District. So, we've spoken to 3 of the sitting board members. None of them recognize that statement, know who said it. So we don't know who said it. Possibly could be Janice, possibly could be Executive Director Renee Brummett, but we're not sure. It's not attributed by Reagan. The other thing I'd like to point out is meeting everyone's expectations. That's impossible. That's not what the library is all about. The library has a very interesting statement on the role of the library in the community. I encourage you to check it out for yourselves. It's in the policy manual on the library's website. But quite broad, but meeting expectations is definitely not written within that. So we don't know who approved that statement. We don't know who gave that statement. Reagan doesn't tell us. She mentions the lawsuit at the end of her article here, but that's all I've got for Reagan. Very interesting, very vague. Back in the day, we would have called that vague booking. That was a term. But yeah, very vague, very vague. Just poorly written article there by Reagan.
Well, and lastly, next we're going to get to Susan Wade of the Springfield Daily Citizen. Now, the Springfield Daily Citizen is a not-for-profit newspaper. I think that's only a couple years old. Again, David Steffler is he's partnered with MSU to put out this publication, and it's David is a former editor of the News Leader, so that tells you pretty much where his
loyalties lie.
Well, his background lies with that. And so she had written an article. This one is called Christian County Commission Candidates Discuss Library Issues, Infrastructure, and More. And she kind of gives we're talking about the Eastern Commissioner position and the Western Commissioner position. The Eastern Commissioner position is very, very interesting. Susan allows the candidate, what's his name? Cruson. What's his first name? David Cruson, a Democrat. And he states that he's running for office because he's not happy with the recent changes to the selection process for people who serve on the Christian County Library Board of Trustees.
Yeah, but he doesn't state why. He just says...
No, he does state that. He actually says county commissioners kind of screwed the pooch when it came to the library board, he says. He says that he believes the change in recent trustee appointments were based on political and religious beliefs rather than experience and education. Now, what I want to know is, did Susan research the validity of his statement? Does she know the background of those people who are now serving on the board? Did she add that as a balance to his statement? Which he continues saying they're not qualified individuals. It seems like the people they're appointing want to ban books or label books and keep them out of the hands of people. Okay, so here you have a Democrat who's running for office against the Commissioner Jackson, who was part of the process of going. For some reason, the board of trustees at the library is putting forward these kinds of books into the children's section and the teen sections of the library. So they just simply took what they already had the power to do, because they're the appointing authority, and that was to vet the candidates instead of just rubber stamping what the Board of Trustees and the staff had as self-perpetuating a certain viewpoint, and it got worse and worse as time went on, and that's why you've had 2 years of citizens opposing what the board, four of the 5, I think, were appointed in 2021, by the way. So Susan doesn't give another side to that other than, just
she lets him word vomit.
Yeah, she lets him riff on it. And, I know for a fact that she knows some of the qualifications of those board members. One is a lawyer of 27 years who's lived in this community her whole life. 2 others are corporate professionals who've worked in corporate America for decades, who are project managers, and at least one of whom has served on a couple other nonprofit boards.
Right. So, I think the issue here is that they didn't talk about how they like to read Anne of Green Gables as a child like Allison, and therefore they must not be qualified for the Library Board of Trustees position.
Well, at any rate, Susan should have provided more information than just the opinion of the Democrat candidate for Eastern Commissioner. I just thought that she should have fact-checked him a little bit, and she didn't. And so he was allowed to let his statements, which are a little bit inflammatory and frankly untrue,
and kind of just in poor taste. I mean, screw the pooch. Come on.
Right. So that's what I have on that, unless you want to talk about Sheila Michaels, who is a librarian and teacher, or past librarian and teacher, who's now running for Western Commissioner against Johnny Williams. Sheila has been attending these meetings and opposing any compromise with the board on labeling and or moving the books to a different location so that children are not being exposed to sexually explicit and age inappropriate books. So there's that too. And last, we're going to get to
Chris Drew
at KSMU.
Yeah, we were seated next to Mr. Drew during the meeting. And there's not much to say about his article besides I think it's decent.
he has a couple little inaccuracies, and that just could be a mishearing or whatever. I mean, no reporter is perfect, but he is by far the most balanced, the least slanted, and kudos to Chris Drew of KSMU, Ozark Public Radio, which is owned by Missouri State University. So I think if you feel like you have to go to the legacy media, KSMU would be the one to go to if you want that. Otherwise, there is a lot of local alternative media. There's Facebook chats. There's We the People of Christian County. There's Pray for Christian County on Facebook. There's RightToWinOzarks.com.
Concerned Parents of the Ozarks.
There's Concerned Parents
Facebook
of the
group.
Concerned Parents of the Ozarks on Facebook, and you're going to get more fact-based information than what is being given here by the legacy media.
I think the excellent news for those who are unable to attend library board meetings is that there is video record of each of these meetings.
Which the new board members had requested, by the way, in the last year for transparency.
Yep. So check it out yourself.
And let's adjourn the closed session.
I think that's it.
All right.